What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the NFL TalkZone podcast, episode 9 now. And this is probably going to be our last NFL Talk Zone as our name because we were planning on changing our name, right, Graham? We don't have a
Yeah,
name yet, but we realized I looked into a little bit of stuff. The NFL, you're not supposed to be using the name in your brands. So since we're actually trying to maybe grow this channel
I
out,
think we should throw a vote out to the fans and see what they say.
but technically you're not supposed to. I don't want to get copyrighted at any point. So
Yeah,
we're planning on changing our name. We have a couple ideas, but expect next week or so, within the coming days or weeks, our name to be changed from NFL Talk Zone to something football related, obviously. But just a heads up, if you see a different name on your timeline, it'll be something football related, and it'll probably be us. So anyway, that's that. But today, we're usually going to have these pods out on Tuesdays. We had to kind of delay it this week. But next week, we expect to have it out probably Tuesday, right, Graham?
yep.
It's just going to be our weekly pods during the season. Week 1 recap and Week 2 preview. I realized in the title I put Week 1 recap, Week 2 preview, but since it's already Week 2, Thursday Night Football is played, we're only going to be talking about Week 2 now. But anyway, next Tuesday or so, we're going to have our Week 2 recap and our Week 3 preview. So today, we're going over a lot of stuff. We'll start it with recapping the Chiefs-Chargers game last night since Thursday Night Football was last night. It was a good game, Graham. So we'll get into that game. So basically, what do you want to start with the game?
I want to go ahead and start talking about the quarterbacks that were played in that game. That was very interesting at the end of the game to see Mr. Herbert hurt, but I think he still played it through fairly well. And then Patrick Mahomes, they both were slow at the first half, and then by the end of the second half, they were both rolling and doing really good. That was one of the best football I've seen Patrick Mahomes play towards that third, fourth quarter
I don't think so.
that I've seen in a little bit. His first half was very shaky, but then once
But
he started to get going, it looked like he looked really, really good. He looked scary.
I thought he had a lot of those turnover-worthy plays in the second half, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I grade a lot of those, so I think you're a little overreacting there, but anyway, keep
It's
going.
it wasn't too bad. Justin Herbert, I hope he's okay. That was a tough hit. Got hit right in the ribs. He's a dog though. I mean, fighting through that injury, if it was broken ribs, I mean that's no joke. Ribs hurt when they get broken and dangerously bad. And the way he fought back on that final drive, that throw that he made, that 45-yard throw that he threw to number 5, I forget that guy's name, but what a dime that he threw at the end of the game. Too bad they ran out of time, didn't recover the onside kick. But overall, this game was really, really entertaining. Good defensive game in the first half, and got a little bit offensively towards the end.
So I'm looking up something with Justin Herbert. He's day-to-day with a fracture to his rib cartilage, according to Brandon Staley. So he's expected to return to practice somewhere around next week or so. But basically with Justin Herbert, I like what you said. That throw at the end was very impressive, and just the way he fought through the injury. Did you see the play before the big throw where he didn't run for the first down? That was a little confusing.
Yeah,
But that just shows how much pain he had to be in if he didn't
yeah,
run for that first down. Because he could have just ran and gave himself up and just dived like a yard or so. But
yeah.
so
But
going
then he
back to
wouldn't
going back
be able to go
to
out of bounds.
Mahomes, let's see here. I had him have. I counted 3 throws that were turnover worthy that should have been intercepted that weren't. But I'm gonna double check that and see what PFF had on that because I actually have that stat. Probably around the same.
It'd probably be
PFF
3 or 4.
PFF also graded 3 turnover worthy plays. So me and PFF both saw the same thing. But anyway, yeah. So I feel like Justin Herbert outplayed Mahomes, but still lost the game, mainly because the Chiefs capitalized on the big turnover at the end of the game,
Yep.
and the Chargers missed their opportunities. Did you see the Asante Samuel Jr. play where it looked like he picked it, but they reversed it?
Yes,
I thought he picked it.
I
I
thought
feel
he
like
picked it as well.
I thought he fell to the ground with his hands on the ball, and I didn't see the ball pop up once he hit the ground. Maybe I'm wrong, but I didn't see the ground help him catch the ball. It just happened he fell on the ground while catching the ball was my
Yeah,
opinion on it. So I think that would
but
have been a big turning point for the Chargers. Then there was the play in the end zone where Mahomes threw a ball short. It looked like he should have gotten it over the corner or out more towards the, what do you call it? The
The pylon.
yeah, the pylon. But that would have been another pick for Asante Samuel Jr. So Asante Samuel Jr. has been very impressive early in the year. But yeah, what were you gonna say?
Another thing that I saw at the game that was pretty interesting that involves the refs was the no call on um the no call on Derwin James on the WWE tackle on Travis Kelsey. So great tackle, very very like fun to post on Instagram and all that. But that's a penalty in football.
Do you think that's a
That
penalty?
should have been called. Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%.
Do you think that
I
Dylan James
remember.
was a penalty? I didn't think it was.
Yes. So I remember a couple of years ago, the Saints were playing the Texans on Monday Night Football Week 1. Marshawn Lattimore got an interception, and DeAndre Hopkins did pretty much the exact same thing, but he was thrown a flag for personal foul. That's a personal foul in the NFL rulebook, and they did call it, which I thought was pretty interesting.
But other stars of the game, I thought Khalil Mack had another good game to follow
Clyde
up week one.
Edwards-Helaire.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire too. I put him down as a player who got a really good game. Khalil Mack though, I thought he got a lot of pressure on Mahomes. See
He
if
made
his
him
stats
move a
back
lot.
that up. But Khalil Mack had 4 pressures, 5 in week 1. He had 3 sacks week 1, 1 sack last week or this past game. So yeah, I think Khalil Mack had a pretty good game. He's definitely looked like the better edge so far for the Chargers, Mack over Bosa, but they've both looked outstanding. But Chris Jones played good for the Chiefs. Willie Gay played good. Asante Samuel Jr., as I mentioned, played good. Dylan James played good. Mike Williams played very good too.
Very good.
Outside of that one play for Gerald Everett, I think he had a good game too. Outside of that one play where he was tired and didn't get off the field. But overall, I thought it was an interesting game. Second half, it got very close. It looked like the Chargers were just going to kind of
Run away
comfortably
with it.
beat the Chiefs, and then the Chiefs fought back. And like I said, the Chiefs capitalized off the turnover off that play where they could get a pick. They got a pick, and the Chargers didn't capitalize off those. But yeah, that's a quick recap of the Chargers Chiefs. Now we can get on to the games that, well, actually, before we get on to the games, let me see what we're going over real quick. We're going over overreaction or not overreaction. So we're going to try to do this every week. The way it will go is I'm going to say a statement, and me and Graham are both going to decide if it's an overreaction or not an overreaction. So the statements are going to be usually like statements that are controversial, I guess, that happened or that like opinions formed after the last week of games. And we'll just get into the statements. So we're going to say if we actually think these are overreactions or not. So starting with the first one, the 49ers should start Jimmy Garoppolo instead of Trey Lance after Trey Lance's not too impressive game versus the Bears, which they ended up losing, including a late interception by Trey Lance. What do you think? Overreaction or not overreaction?
I would say overreaction. It's hard to judge, especially week 1. And it's also, if you looked at the weather, they looked like they were playing in a swimming pool. No, technically, second-year quarterback is going to succeed like in that kind of condition. No veteran quarterback was going to succeed in that position. Justin Fields didn't look too good, and neither did Trey Lance. I'm not surprised. The Chicago Bears, just that it was a weird game. Soldier Field was a mess. It's hard to prevail, especially like one of your first starts of your career. I believe it's his third start. I mean, that's very, very tough conditions to play in, and I think that's just a little bit of an overreaction right now.
I feel like Trey Lance, that's an overreaction that he shouldn't be the starter because I think it's going to take time to get going. Like you said, bad conditions. And I feel like Trey Lance, kind of like how I've always felt about him, I feel like watching Fields and Trey Lance playing the same exact game versus each other for the first time, I believe, it just looked like I think Justin Fields outplayed Lance because the big plays he made in the second half, but Lance looks more comfortable throwing the football in the pocket compared to Justin Fields. And although Lance didn't do a whole lot of it, the plays he did make, it showed that he can make the plays in the pocket. And I still think you factor in his athletic upside that he brings over Jimmy Garoppolo and the fact that it was one game in awful conditions. I think that Trey Lance should still be the starter, and I think he's going to continue to improve throughout the year. So that's the first one. We both think that Trey Lance should still be the starter for the 49ers. On to the next one. We got the Bengals are going to have a Super Bowl hangover. Is that an overreaction or not an overreaction?
I'm gonna say overreaction. Like I said about the Bears and the 49ers, this was just a week one game. I mean, crazy upsets. It took teams a little bit to get going. I just think it's way too early to make that call. I mean, we'll see. Joe Burrow did not look good. He did not look good. We can all agree that was the worst Joe Burrow has looked ever in the NFL.
So I'm going to also agree with you that the Bengals are going to have a Super Bowl hangover is an overreaction. I do not think the Bengals will have a Super Bowl hangover. The way I look at it is Burrow did play probably the worst game of his career with the 4 interceptions, and you still took him to overtime. 2 chip shot, well, I guess you can call them chip shot field goals, the extra point blocks, and the 29-yard field goal missed due to a bad snap with the laces being towards where the kicker was kicking. So I feel like with all that, and you still took that team to overtime, who the Steelers, I did pick them to beat the Bengals mainly because it just felt like the Bengals won a trap game coming off a Super Bowl, first game of the year. Steelers are still a pretty good opponent, in my opinion. And TJ Watt just really blowing by that Bengals O-line. Part of the reason I picked the Steelers because the Bengals O-line, new pieces yet to gain chemistry probably. So I feel like it's an overreaction to say that the Bengals are going to have a Super Bowl hangover, mainly because they were playing a pretty good opponent, and you took them to overtime with Joe Burrow throwing 4 picks. How often is that going to happen? And
Yep.
your offensive line is still trying to gain chemistry. So, and your kicker, that's not always going to happen. I'm pretty confident in McPherson going forward.
Yep.
So, on to the third statement. The Vikings are going to win the NFC North. This is an interesting one. Overreaction or not an overreaction?
You would have asked me this question about 2 weeks ago, maybe even last week. I would have said overreaction, crazy overreaction. Vikings don't look good. Their defense looks sketchy. Packers look okay. Aaron Rodgers is going to come back. You asking me this question today, and honestly, I'm going to be honest. This is not an overreaction at all. This might actually be the more likely scenario. I was very wrong about the Vikings. Their defense looks really good. They completely shut down Aaron Rodgers. Their offense is completely revamped. Kirk Cousins looks like an above-average quarterback, and Justin Jefferson looks like he's on track for the best receiver season of all time. It's crazy.
So this one's actually a hard one because I did have the Vikings beating the Packers week 1, and I think I had them 2 games apart, like 12-5 Packers, 10-7 Vikings, and I did have the Vikings winning week 1, so nothing really changed for me. But I'm gonna actually agree with you here. Not an overreaction that the Vikings are going to win the NFC North. I don't think they are, but I disagree with you that it's more likely than not. I still think Packers week 1. Saw it last year. They struggled week 1, came back, won 13 games. And you factor in those receivers trying to get chemistry with Rodgers. O-line was banged up without Bakhtiari and Elton Jenkins. And the projected number 1 receiver in Allen Lazard was out. So I feel like things won't go in the Packers' way. The reason why I say this is not an overreaction, though, because I do think the Vikings are a very good team. And the way they beat the Packers was a little bit more in dominant fashion than I thought it would be. I thought it'd be a pretty close game, and the Vikings handled the Packers from the start to the finish. Vikings defense looking very impressive. They're playing up to the talent they have on that defense because it's very talented. Justin Jefferson, like a lot of us think, can have an historic receiving season. Looks like that could be the case. And yeah, Kirk Cousins is good at football. People got to accept that. It's been like that for years now. But
did you
anyway,
see that the Packers were playing a lot of zone defense with Jair Alexander?
I heard about that.
Yeah, like it just looked weird on the field. You would expect Jair Alexander, the best man cornerback in football, to be one-on-one with Justin Jefferson, but he wasn't. And
I don't think he's the best man cornerback in football. I think Jair is more of a zone corner.
I disagree. I think he's better in man.
Interesting.
But anyways, I mean, your best corner should be on your best receiver. Bengals finna lock in. We'll see. I agree with it. I think they're finna lock in as well, but we'll see. 4 interceptions is not good.
But so that segment, I like that segment. Overreaction, not an
Yeah,
overreaction.
was
It was
good.
definitely fun after week 1. It should get fun throughout the year too, as we see how teams play out. But
Maybe we'll get more outlandish.
I was about to say we didn't talk over these overreaction statements really beforehand. I think next time we got to talk them over beforehand and find some ones where we're a little bit more disagreeing on because we agreed on all
Yeah,
3 of them. So maybe we could have a little debate next time if we get statements we disagree on. So moving on to
my top 10.
arguably the highlight of the podcast, Graham's top 10 teams.
Let's go.
Let me get these pulled up. So we did these during preseason, first podcast, then last week going into the year, we did Graham's top 10 teams, and a little bit has probably changed over 1 week of football compared to the last time we compared to your last one because it was just preseason to regular season. But now we actually have games played, so let's pull these up. So on to Graham's top 10 teams. Starting at number 10, you have the Indianapolis Colts coming off a little disappointing of a game. You're playing the Texans. It is in Houston, Matt Ryan's first game, and you tie the Texans after being down 20-3 in the fourth quarter, start of the fourth quarter, around that time. So impressive comeback. You can go over the Colts, but I actually want to add something. I like the Colts still at 10. I believe I had them at 9 in my power rankings, 9 or 10, 8, 9 or 10 range. But because they did start slow, and they really picked it up. So I think that the team we saw in the fourth quarter is mainly going to be the team we're going to see the rest of the year. And I know these aren't predictions, they're just ranking right now, but I think the Colts didn't do enough to fall out of the top 10, even though they tied. Just think that game was fluky. You see the Alec Pierce drop in the end zone. Then they got stopped on like fourth and very short inside the 10-yard line. Matt Ryan do a pick on a screen. How often is that going to happen? And then they missed a field goal. They missed a field goal in overtime at 42 yards, and they got rid of Blankenship now.
Yep.
But anyway, you can talk about them. So talk about your first few.
Yep. All right. So number 10, I have the Indianapolis Colts. They stay at number 10. So you'll notice a theme with a couple. There's 2 teams in particular that I have this certain situation for, and one was very successful versus the other. It takes sometimes in week 1, it takes their good teams a little bit to get going, and the Colts were a fine example of that. They looked horrible the first 2.5, 3 quarters of football. Once they got it rolling, they looked like the team that we expect them to be. Moving on to number 9, I got the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, Justin Jefferson just looks like a dog. I mean, he's crazy. Defense looked good, completely manhandled the Packers. They did whatever they wanted to. Number 8, we got the Cincinnati Bengals. Tough game for Joe Burrow, but the fact that they were still there at the end of the game and they managed to get that game to overtime, I'm not going to fault them too much for that. Week 1, we'll see how they progress throughout the year. I mean, you have a pretty much whole entire revamped offensive line. They got to gain chemistry, got to gain that trust that offensive linemen have. Defense, still a little question marky. I mean, Mitchell Trubisky should not be leading a team down the field towards the end of the game. That needs to be solved immediately. And then at number 7, this one's a little bit of a surprise, and it's very much of an overreaction as a Saints fan. I have the Saints at 7. They did not look good the first 3 quarters of football. The defense looked bad. The defense looked like they didn't know how to play together. Offense looked very, very out of whack, out of shape. They didn't look like they worked together. And to be honest with you, I think I read a stat. It was like 7 out of the 11 players did not have more than 15 preseason snaps. And those other 4 players, I think, were offensive linemen. It was crazy. I don't know where I saw that. It may not be true. But this team had no preseason work together in any preseason games. And it showed. It took them a little bit. Offensive line finally got it together at the end of the game. Defense finally got it together at the end of the game. And the wide receiving core, once they're clicking, oh my gosh. Jameis Winston can throw it to anyone he wants, whenever he wants, however he wants. Chris Olave is breaking people's ankles, and he still won't even throw it to him. Jarvis Landry's making great catches. Michael Thomas is back. Big Mike is back. And that makes me very excited. This team, it looks really good. That defense finally clicked. Taylor, our nickel cornerback, had like a 38.2 passer rating for a game. He looked really, really good too.
Alontae Taylor, the rookie out of Tennessee.
Yes. Yes, he looked
Okay,
really
you're
good.
just going off about your team. So once we get to picks and we talk about the Bears, be ready.
Okay. All right, moving on to number 6. I have the Los Angeles Chargers. Tough loss last night, but I'm going to give Justin Herbert a lot of credit for how he played. He played really good for the most part. I won't take full blame on him for that interception. I think that's a little bit on Everett.
I think that
He
was a
looked
lot
like
on Everett.
yeah, he should have came inside, and I think Herbert thought the same thing. He was exhausted. He was tired. You could tell.
Yeah, he was
Um,
tired. You really can't say, because it's really hard to play when you're that tired as he looked. But yeah, that's not on Herbert. Definitely not really on
yeah,
Herbert. He's
it's
throwing the
it.
ball to where he expects his receiver to go. Receiver was tired. That's the main reason why he didn't get there. But oh well.
Yeah, I'm just gonna I'm gonna put that up as just unfortunate, and then I'll let you talk about my 6 through 10.
So Vikings, I like at 9, moving up a few spots for me. I think I'm around the 8-9 range too. Bengals, 8. I think I have them at 7. They were my preseason in 1, so I can't move them down too much because, as I mentioned earlier, I think a lot of stuff went into that loss that's not really stuff that you expect to happen with a team like the Bengals. On to 7. I feel like New Orleans. I have a question, Graham. So New Orleans, you have them at 7 after squeaking by the Falcons, who are one of the worst teams in football, but they weren't in your top 10 before the year. So how'd they jump all that time? Is it just like you finally saw your team playing? You're like, oh, now I got to put them in the top 10.
Yep, I just needed
Okay.
to see them play. I needed to see if Jameis Winston can lead the Saints to win, and he did. And I'm
To
very
be
proud.
honest, I didn't watch too much of that game, but I heard Winston played good.
At the end of the game, beginning of the game, he was just getting hit around. He was getting sacked left and right. He had no time to throw. Eventually, the offensive line, helped him out, and he finally was able to go through his progressions. There is one scare though. Alvin Kamara looked terrible, absolutely horrible. And Taysom Hill also looked really good.
But New Orleans, they have a big game this week versus the Bucks. So I feel like next week, if they beat the Bucks, they could surely be up here. But
Oh yeah,
your list, number 6, Chargers, coming off a tough loss to the Chiefs. I had them at 4 going into the game yesterday. So how much does that loss impact them? I can't really evaluate that. I got to see how the rest of the week plays out because we're doing this on a Thursday after we've seen one game week 2. So it's kind of hard to rank teams like the Chargers and Chiefs. But on to the Ravens. The Ravens, I have in this range too. Ravens, very good win. I had them around this 5, 6, 7, 8 range going into the year and dominated. Well, I guess you can say they dominated the Jets. They won comfortably, so it's
yep.
validating having them around here, especially with a team like the Bengals losing. So moving on to Eagles at 4. I have them at 3, so I like this a lot. I think that the Lions, they played them very well. They did let the Lions get closer than I would like to at the end of the game, but oh well. I still like the Eagles a lot. I don't think they did anything to move out of the top 5 for me, having them in their preseason. On to 3, Buccaneers. Buccaneers. Actually, I'll let you take over because you didn't go through 5 through 1. But I already talked about your team, so you can talk about yours, and then I'll finish talking about your top 3.
All right. Number 5, you can just comfortably win. They looked really crazy to talk about. Eagles letting the Lions come back in the game. A little scary, but AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts looked really, really. We saw flashes of Sanders actually being that one running back that we expected him to be a couple years ago. If he can stay healthy, I think he might become that. Number 3, I have the Bucks. Their defense is really good. They locked down CeeDee Lamb. Off a little slow. They got to get that going soon. Tom Brady, Tom's vulnerable this year for the first time in a long time. I'd be interested to see how they play against the Saints. They're not going to have Chris Godwin against the Saints out with a hamstring injury. Number 2, I got the Kansas Chiefs. Last night, great win. Mahomes finally getting his together at the fourth quarter. Finally, at number 1, the Buffalo Bills. There is to say other than Josh Allen is elite. That defense is elite, and they're an easy division. Really hard conference, but really easy. They're the best team in football. No ifs, ands, or buts.
So you got Bucks at 3. I feel like that was a very dominating performance week 1. Maybe the only thing with the Bucks is Tom Brady didn't look amazing, but if Tom Brady's not looking amazing, they're still pretty good because everywhere else was looking good, and you only expect Tom Brady to improve. But they still had a pretty dominating Week 1 game versus a tough place to play in Dallas. The Dallas Cowboys were banged up. Dak went down late in the game, so that factored into it. But very impressive game for the Bucs. I actually have the Bucs at 1. I had them 2 before the year. They moved up because the Bengals were 1 and lost. So I like the Bucs this high, but I'd have them a little bit higher than you. On to 2, Chiefs. I think this is a little bit high for me. I think they're in that 5-6 range. Just because I still have a little bit concerns about their defense, even though it's been playing pretty good through 2 weeks. So I guess if you're evaluating based off the 2 weeks they've played, you got to have them around this range. But I feel like they kind of snuck by the Chargers due to those lucky drops by the Chargers defense, or missed opportunities picking off the ball. But I don't know if I think the Chiefs are the second best team in football. Patrick Mahomes looked good so far. Defense a little bit shaky though, and they haven't this game week 2. I feel like the Chargers kind of outplayed them, and but they did beat the Chargers, so that's pretty impressive when you win a game against a good team. And I think you got outplayed, but oh well. 1 Bills. I have the Bills at 2 just because I have the Bucs ahead of them preseason, and I think the Bucs didn't do anything to move down. Although the Bills definitely made it a challenge, but both teams blew out pretty good opponents in my opinion. Probably the Rams better than the Cowboys at this point, but yeah, I like the Bills. No problem with them at 1, although I have them at 2. But that's your top 10 teams. Now we can move on to my MVP ladder. So this should be fun. Let's get on to the MVP ladder. Anything to add, Graham?
No, I'm pretty happy about my list. I don't really think there's any flaws. People are going to be a little bit, I think probably people are going to be upset about the Colts being still in the top 10 after a shaky start, and maybe the Saints being at 7, a little high for people. But I think it's overall pretty fair. Jumping ahead, to your MVP ladder, I took a little peek of it before the podcast. We saved 3. Yeah, look at that. The exact same.
So here's my MVP ladder. Here's how we're going to go over this. Weekly, I'm going to pull up this graphic with the MVP ladder, whatever week it is. I have 1, 2, 3. Then over here, you see the ladder. Preseason, my week 1 MVP was Josh Allen. After week 1, Josh Allen. Josh Allen, I feel like, was the best. I'll say the most valuable player in football after week 1, because there's some defensive performances that you could argue, put him for a case for being the best player week 1. Khalil Mack is one of those guys, but Josh Allen, I think, is the most valuable player after week 1. His game was very good. I'm not going to say flawless, but there wasn't too much to gripe at. He did have a bad pick. It wasn't a bad pick, but it wasn't the best pick. He kind of threw it a little bit off to the guy and then crossing over the middle of the field. But just the threat as a passer and a runner for that Bills offense is insane. I actually think they ran him a little bit too much, especially towards the end of the game when they had the game pretty much wrapped up and you're still running Josh Allen up the middle for some reason. But just a dominant performance. On to number 2, Justin Jefferson. So if you're just going after week 1, I had Mahomes at 2 and Jefferson at 3. But I guess I am kind of factoring in last night because I can't pretend like we didn't watch the Chiefs-Chargers game last night. So I'm going to have Mahomes and Justin Jefferson flip. Just because I think Mahomes did kind of get outplayed by Herbert a little bit, but Mahomes still won the game, and I think Mahomes outplayed Herbert week 1 whenever they played different teams. So I still have Mahomes at 3, but Justin Jefferson at 2, just a dominating performance. The Packers just couldn't cover him. I feel like Justin Jefferson you put the value in there, you still got to have him in the top 3. Just how much value he brings as a receiver to that Vikings offense. I believe it was close, but he may have had more receiving yards than the whole Packers team, or at least at some point.
I think he did.
In the game, he did have more.
I think the running backs had more receiving yards than the receivers did.
Okay, well, Justin Jefferson, just a dominant performance. Again, no one can cover him in all of football. We're witnessing one of the best receivers to ever step in the game this early, and if he continues, he's going to be up there for the best to ever play when it's all said and done. If he continues, but
holy overreaction.
Yeah. Okay.
Justin Jefferson. Do you want me to go through your top 3?
Real quick. Justin Jefferson. Guys you can compare him to stepping into the league this first 2-3 years. Randy Moss, Odell Beckham Jr. Randy Moss went on to be a top 2-3 receiver of all time. Odell Beckham Jr. got injured, but if Jefferson continues, I think he's going to be in that J.A. Rice, Don Hudson, Randy Moss conversation for best receiver to ever play football. If he's still playing, if he plays in the NFL around 12 to 15 years at a high level for a good amount of those, I think in 5 years from now, Jefferson's going to be a top 10 receiver of all time. 10 years from now, he'll be a top 5 receiver of all time. And if he can go pushing 15 years, he can be in that conversation for the best, depending how dominant it looks. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll go that far about Justin Jefferson, but this year I'm expecting a historic year. I like him at number 2. I like Patrick Mahomes at number 3. Like I said, Shaky started the start of the week 2 game against the Chargers last night. I would almost put Justin Herbert here at 3, but those guys are pretty much interchangeable. And then the clear-cut number 1, Josh Allen. He is the most valuable player on his team. The offense runs through Josh Allen's. Whatever Josh Allen does, that's what the offense does. When you nutmeg one of the best linebackers in football in week 1 on opening night, you deserve to be number 1 on the MVP ladder.
Well, Graham, were you expecting a Don Hudson reference going into the
I was
pod
not
tonight?
expecting that. I was not expecting you to say that he's one of the best receivers of all time. But
Don Hudson, only receiver to win MVP off the top of my head, I think.
Yep.
And he won it twice, I believe. But
yes,
Don Hudson can be in another video. But Justin Jefferson, he's been the best receiver in football since the day he stepped on the field that week 3 game when he took over for the starting receiver for the Vikings in 2020. Yep. But anyway, other candidates, Lamar, Herbert are right there. Khalil Mack definitely is up there. TJ Watt if he didn't get hurt.
Yeah, didn't get hurt.
But yeah, TJ Watt was very dominant. I was considering having him on here, but he did get hurt late in the game and wasn't out there to help him close it out, so that factored into not having him on the list. But moving on to the next segment, we got just a couple of things that we are looking forward to for this upcoming. Let me pull up something. What are we most looking forward to for this upcoming week? Week 2 now. I actually got to think about this.
I'll tell you mine first. Right now. I know mine. So I only have one, but it is. I swear I'm not a homer, guys.
I'm about to be a homer.
It is. I have the Bucks and the Saints game. I'm very looking forward to this because we don't really know. We don't know if the fourth quarter for the Saints was like the team that it's going to be all year, or if that was just the Falcons being the Falcons and choking away every game they can. And does week 1, with all the field goals the Bucks are doing, can they finally score into the end zone and actually produce points? We'll see. I'm excited because there's a lot of question marks.
Okay. On to speaking of unknowns, Bears, Packers, Sunday Night Football. Are the Bears for real? And are the Packers offense just going to suck without Devontae Adams? Can the Bears go into Lambeau Field and beat the Packers for the first time in I don't know. We haven't beat them since 2018, and we haven't beat them in Green Bay since 2015 off the top of my head. But can the Bears go show that they're the big boys in the division now? Or can the Bears will it show that the Bears were just a fluke week 1, bad weather, Packers are going to get things going? We'll see. Could go either way, but we'll see. I'm looking forward to just what happens Sunday night on Sunday Night Football. But,
can I answer your question, please? No, they cannot. The Packers are going to win.
Okay. On to the picks. Yeah, maybe the Packers will win. But on to the picks. Chiefs, Chargers. We did both have the Chiefs last night, by the way, but that game already happened. We recapped it. Move on to the Jets, Browns. This is one we have different. I actually have it as my upset of the week because I believe the Jets are 6-point underdogs. The way the Jets can win this game is the Jets, they were really good defensively defending the Ravens' run last week, and the Ravens have a very good rushing attack. And I think the Jets are going to also defend the Browns' run very well. Just the difference is the Browns have Jacoby Brissett, the Ravens have Lamar Jackson. The Browns don't have a Mark Andrews on the team. So I think that the Browns are going to be forced. They're not going to get complete shut down rushing, but I think they're going to slow down enough to where they're going to have to be put in those uncomfortable passing situations. And I feel like the Jets' corners, DJ Reed, Ahmad Gardner, both coming off fairly good week 1 games. So I feel like the Jets' defense is kind of going to step up here. This young defense is going to be good. And I believe Joe Flacco last week still threw 300 yards or so. So I think that Joe Flacco, Jacoby Brissett, you can lean either way. But I think that the Jets' defense is going to step up and that the the Browns offense, although the Browns defense is good and could do some slowing up the Jets offense for sure, I think the Jets defense is going to completely have a good game plan versus the Browns offense, and Joe Flacco and company would do enough just to pull off an upset in Cleveland.
I can see it, but I'm gonna have the Browns winning this game. The Jets. I need to wait until Zach Wilson comes back. I don't really trust Joe Flacco at quarterback. I'm gonna go ahead and be a safe pick here. I'm gonna go with the Browns.
On to the next one, Commandos-Lions. I saw actually the Lions were favored for the first time since 2020, I believe, or something like that.
Yes,
The Lions are favored in Detroit versus the Commandos.
by
Commandos
2
look good
points.
week one. Commandos look good week one. The Commandos are going to win this game, in my opinion. I just feel like, although Jeff Okudah kind of had maybe the best game of his career, one of the best games of his career, guarding Devontae Smith and other Eagles receivers last Sunday, I feel like this Washington receiving core is going to do a lot of damage versus the Lions corners and secondary overall. And I still think that the what am I saying? The Commandos have the upgrade at quarterback compared to the Lions. I like Wentz more than Goff, and I just like the Commandos.
I respect that. I'm gonna go with the Lions. I'm gonna go with the kneecap eater Dan Campbell led Lions. Favorite at home. I like that. They got a chip on their shoulder. They looked competitive against the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think the Eagles are a lot better team than Washington. I think Carson Wentz is going to struggle. I think the Lions are going to go ahead and take care of business at home.
I forgot to mention, looking at our overall records last week, I went 10-6. Well, we're factoring in last week and Thursday Night Football last night, Chiefs Chargers. I'm 10-6 so far. Graham, you are 11-5. Now that I think about that, it doesn't sound right because the 16 games week one. Did we miss something?
Maybe you didn't add Thursday.
Anyway, but we're one game apart. Both had solid week ones. Upside of the week, we actually both got. I had Steelers over Chargers. Well, not Chargers. Steelers over Bengals. Graham had Giants over Titans. And how that works is the biggest – we look at all the underdogs we have winning. Whatever is the biggest underdog spread-wise, that's the upside of the week. Moving on, though, Saints playing Bucks. This should be a good one, but I'm looking at the Bucks injury report, factoring in, I believe this game is in New Orleans, if I'm not mistaken. And I just feel like the Saints are going to pull off another win in the regular season versus the Bucks this time.
Yeah, I agree. And John is right in the comics section. We have the tie that's missing.
Oh, yeah, that's why. We're missing the tie because we don't count the ties. I guess you could put in -1 as like that game didn't count. But like when the ESPN pick them, they just completely throw that game out. And
Yep.
It would take up too much space on the graphic. I'd have to make this font small to put the -1 for no reason. So
that's what's missing. But going
Thank
back
you,
to talking about the Saints Bucks. We already talked about this game. I think the Saints will win this one. Not that close.
What?
I was talking about the Saints game. I think the Saints will win. It'll be close.
You can't just say Saints win, not close. Move on.
I meant to say it'll be close, not it
won't
be close. My bad.
Okay.
It'll be close. It'll be a good game.
On to Panthers Giants. Both have the Giants here. This is kind of 50-50 one, but I like the Giants' momentum after winning week one. I like the Giants' offense a little bit more than the Panthers' offense. I like Daniel Jones more than Baker Mayfield. And although I do think the Giants are very weak at corner, but I do like the pass rush. Kayvon Thibodeau is expected to play this week. We'll see if Azeez Ojulari plays too. But I like the Giants in this one. I believe it is in New York, but it might be in Carolina. I'm actually going to check that. But go on.
It is in New York, I believe. I also got the Giants winning this game. I think Daniel Jones didn't look too bad. Ryan Dable definitely put some confidence in Daniel Jones at the game. I think the Giants will take care of business.
Daniel Jones, not Daniel Jones. The Giants have a chance to start 3-0 because I believe they play the Cowboys next week, and Cowboys looking banged up, so they have a chance there. Moving on, though, Steelers-Patriots. I'll let you start with this one. It's your upside of the week.
Yep. All right. So I have the Steelers beating the Patriots. Patriots are actually favored to win by 2.5 points here. I guess since it's a home game, they're just going to assume that the Patriots are going to be better. I actually completely disagree. I remember, I don't know if you remember, what did I call the Patriots defense?
Stale chip.
That's what the Patriots team is as a whole. Chip. That offense looked horrendous. That looked horrendous. So, are you going to go up against a team that just beat the defending AFC champions, have a little bit of momentum going, and this is being bred for an absolute blowout. I think the Steelers are going to dominate this game. That defense, yes, they're missing TJ Watt, but you were Mika Fitzpatrick. Do I even need to continue? We got Devin Bush. There's so many ballers on this team, and I think the Steelers are going to go ahead and take care of business, and they're going to dominate this game.
I just want to add a quick note. My dad watches our podcast, and he thought it was funny that you said that the Patriots are a stale chip.
Interesting.
But moving on, Colts, Jaguars. We both got the Colts. The playing in Jacksonville hasn't been good for the Colts, but I think that the Colts are just going to bounce back after tying the Texans and beat the Jags. I just think the Colts are way more talented than Jacksonville, even though Jacksonville's headed in the right direction. Anything you would add on this one?
I just think the Colts will take care of business and then move on.
Yeah, I'm not gonna predict off previous years when I'm looking at Jaguars Colts. Like, it's kind of not. I don't think that's the best way to go about it. But anyway, moving on to a game we have different. Last one we have different. We have 3 games different this week. We covered 2 of them. I have the Dolphins beating the Ravens. I believe I had this before the year end. It's only been 1 week. I'm kind of sticking with that. I think that although the Dolphins or the Ravens, they do match up pretty well with the Dolphins receivers with the secondary. I'm unsure if Marcus Peters is going to play though, but I just really like I really like Waddle and Hill even versus those good corners just to do enough to get this win for the Dolphins. And I think defensively, Dolphins have a very complete good defense. I think previous years they've been very strong in the secondary, especially at corner. But now I think that the overall front 7 has improved to become one of the best in football. So I think overall they have enough weapons on defense to maybe not slow down, but do enough on defense to put up enough points on offense to win and beat the Ravens. Commanders is a W pick. Yeah, Commanders is a W pick.
It's a no pick. But I'm actually go ahead and disagree with you on this one, Nick. I don't think the Dolphins offense with Tua at quarterback is going to be able to keep up with the Ravens offense. I think the Ravens defense stacks up very well against the Dolphins. Offensive line looks shaky. Patrick Queen is going to dominate this game over the middle of the field. And when they send him on blitzes, I think he's going to be able to be that X factor guy that everyone thought he would be coming out of LSU. I think Lamar Jackson's going to have a field day. Do you remember when the Dolphins and the Ravens played week 1 a couple years ago?
Well, a couple of years ago, they did play week 1, but come on, that was like Brian Flores' first game or so.
Yep.
Team was way different. That team was one of the worst teams in football.
Different.
Last year, remember Thursday Night Football, the Dolphins beat the Ravens.
I do remember that.
But I still think the Dolphins have a good matchup.
I think this matches up better for the Ravens. I think we just see it differently.
Okay. Well, we can move on. That's fair enough that we see it differently with the Dolphins-Ravens. But moving on to Rams-Falcons. Falcons put up a contest versus New Orleans last week. Rams maybe a little bit of a letdown opening game, but I still think the Rams will bounce back, take care of business comfortably. Yep. On to Seahawks-Niners. Seahawks impressive week 1 win. Niners maybe a little disappointing loss in bad conditions, but I feel like the Niners are going to turn things around here. I feel like this is a good get-right game for Trey Lance versus a defense that, although it outplayed my expectation week 1, I still don't think is good on paper. So I think this is going to be a get-right game for the Niners. Anything you want to add?
Nope. Pretty much you said the first 2 games about how I'd expect. I just think overall as a whole on this right side, we agree with every single one of these games. And they're not really close.
Maybe. There's going to be a close one near the end. A couple close ones near the end. Bengals, Cowboys. Cowboys, Andrew Dak out. Bengals going to take care of business comfortably, in my opinion. Yep. Broncos, Texans. This game's actually an interesting one. But Broncos coming off a week 1 loss. It's just hard to see them starting 0-2, losing to the Seahawks and Texans. But Texans could provide them a little bit of a challenge game as in Denver. If it was in Houston, it'd be tempting to pick the Texans. Still probably pick Broncos, but in Denver, I'm pretty confident still in the Broncos beating the Texans.
Russell Wilson's got a ride.
Raiders, Cardinals, both coming off week 1 losses. I feel like the Raiders are a little bit more of a complete team, and I just like the firepower on offense more than the Cardinals, even though the Cardinals' offense is pretty solid. But I like the Raiders in a bounce-back win versus the Cardinals. Anything you want to add there?
Nope. I just think Devontae Adams is going to have a really good game against that weaker secondary, and I think the Raiders are going to take care of business.
On to arguably, well, not the
Oh,
game of the
Lord.
one of the games of the week. One of the games I'm most excited for, probably the game I am most excited for, Bears, Packers in Lambeau Field. So I am so back and forth on this game. Usually every year it gets to pick them. I got to pick the Bears to beat the Packers, and I'll take the 2 L's a year. But this year I'm actually thinking the Bears have a good shot. The Packers, it comes down to this. Alan Lazard, David Bakhtiari, and Elton Jenkins were both out last week. If 2 or 3 of them play, I'm picking the Packers. But if 2 or 3 of them are out, so only 1 or 3 of them or none of them play, I'm switching my pick to the Bears, and I'll let you guys know in the comments before the game Sunday. I'll pin a comment if I change my pick to the Bears. If not, then there will be no comment. But yeah, I'm just looking at those crucial for the Packers because the Bears have a very good defense. Look at week 1. Maybe it's just a week 1 thing, but I think they're going to have a defense better than I thought going into the year. I trust their coaching. And if the Packers are missing their 2 top offensive linemen and top receiver, in my opinion, the Bears have a very good shot at winning this game. Even though I am worried about the Bears' offensive line, outperformed expectation week 1, but now going against a very good Packer team on defense. Although the Niners were a good defense too, but I don't expect the Bears' offensive line to be good 2 weeks in a row against good pass rushes. So that's a little concerning. Bears could potentially struggle to run the ball on this Niners team. Don't have too much receiving depth outside of Mooney, who has to face Alexander. But I feel like if the Packers are missing pieces on offense, the Bears have the pieces on defense to slow up the Packers' offense. Fields makes enough plays outside the pocket. The Bears can beat the Packers. But I'm sticking with the Packers unless some of those guys are injured, who I injured or ended up being out for the Packers. I'll switch to the Bears just because I want to. But Packers over Bears right now. And if I do end up switching this game, it'll be my new upset of the week. But as of now, I got the Packers. That's that. Anything you would add to the most anticipated game of the week for me?
The Bears are going to get crushed.
Okay, speaking of getting crushed, we are how much point underdogs? Bears are 10
points.
10 point underdogs. That is absolutely
If
ridiculous.
I was a betting man, I am not taking the spread on that. I am going to leave that alone because I think the Packers are going to win by that more than that.
Okay, I'll give you a score prediction. Packers 20, Bears 17. Going to be a close one in Lambeau. But that's that. We can move on to the 2 Monday night games. First Monday night game is Bills-Titans. This is actually a big spread. This is a 10-point spread. Like, that's surprising. 10-point spread? I think that
I'm not surprised.
as good as the... But I feel like the Titans match up good with the Bills, and it's week 2. It's a new week now. I feel like the Titans are going to keep this a close game. I still think the Bills are just a significantly better roster than the Titans will ultimately win the game. But I think it's going to be a closer game, like maybe a 28-24-ish game, something like that. So I definitely would take the Titans against the spread. But for the overall game, I think the Bills will win. But anything you would add to this game?
No, I mean, I kind of agree with you. I think it'll be right. I think it'll be right at like the 10 to 14 point range game. I think the Bills will win like 24 to 14 or 27-17, something around there. I just think the Bills just overall are just their team. It all comes down to the quarterback position. Ryan Tannehill does not compete with Josh Allen, and I think Josh Allen's going to take care of business.
On to the next Monday night game, the Monday night game I'm most excited for. I think this game is game of the week potential. This game could be game of the week. 2 teams we both have in our top 10 teams playing on Monday Night Football. In Philadelphia, Vikings play the Eagles. This is a very interesting matchup. I'm ultimately taking the Eagles to beat the Vikings just because I trust the Eagles a little bit more at home on a Monday night than I do with the Vikings. But it's a game that's 50-50. I think both teams are going to get pressure on the other quarterback with their dominant pass rushes. But I think that the Eagles have a little bit better of a pass rush than the Vikings. And I think the Eagles have a little bit better of an offensive, a lot better than an offensive line than the Vikings. So I think that leans Philly up front. Cousins slightly better than Hurts, but Jalen Hurts is solid. It's not too far off. both teams have great receivers, so this is an exciting game. I do lean with the Eagles secondary over the Vikings secondary, but game can go either way. Ultimately, it's in Philadelphia. I like the Eagles up front a little bit more than the Vikings, although I like both teams up front. But I'm going to go with the Eagles to beat the Vikings.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with you. Everything you said, I almost agree. It's gonna be a toss-up game. It's gonna be fun watching Darius Slay and James Bradbury go up against oh my god, Justin Jefferson. I'm really tired. It's been a long day. But yeah, it'll be fun to watch. I'm excited.
And I do think going back to this game, Hurts can maybe make a little bit more plays against the other team's good pass rush outside the pocket than Cousins, which could maybe
Yep.
have an impact. But yeah, this is going to be a pretty good game because Cousins can definitely swing it too, and it's going to be a good game. I'm excited for, but that will wrap up our week 2 picks. So we have 3 different Jets, Washington, Dolphins. Then you have the Browns, Lions, Ravens in those games. So interesting games this weekend. It's going to be a good weekend, but we'll be back here Tuesday likely Tuesday. Hopefully it doesn't get changed. But
Yep.
next week sometime, we're going to be recapping week 2, previewing week 3, updating our MVP ladder if it changes. With my MVP ladder, Graham will update his top 10 teams, assuming it changes. So yeah, we'll be back next week, but that's going to do it for this podcast. Is there anything you want to say before we head out?
Yep. I really hope Dan Campbell really eats Dan Snyder's kneecaps off.
Wow. You said Dan, and I thought you were going to talk about Snyder, but you mentioned Campbell, and I was like, okay, it's not going to talk about Snyder. And you found a way to mention Dan Snyder because they were playing each other. But anyway, that'll
I
wrap
want him
it up.
gone.
That'll